It's IB Countdown to Kickoff. We've come to the end of the regular season. Notre Dame and Stanford in Palo Alto with Vince D'Addario and Jesse Stiers. I'm Sean Stiers as we get this sucker going. Hope you've had a great Thanksgiving weekend and not killed any in-laws or outlaws or enjoyed your food and the company that you were with. Boy, those games Thursday, man. Whew, unbelievable.
Edge of my seat the entire time.
I know.
Edge of my seat.
I know. And when that guy threw that pass and hit that guy, and that was just
that touchdown.
That was good football. I feel like I'm doing an AI show right now. All right. Well, we've got a lot to get to. So Notre Dame, of course, coming off a win over Wake Forest. As we head into this game against Stanford, guys, what maybe stood out to you from last week's win?
The game plan. I mean, the offensive game plan, I think, really stood out to me. I was very impressed with the way that they kind of attack things with the play action, with, all of it, frankly, getting the outside receivers more involved, moving Greathouse back into the slot, just doing things that they know they had success with in the past. It's like, oh, hey, maybe we should try doing some of that, in an actual game plan. And so it was refreshing the way that they operated. It was fantastic offensively. I was really happy with it, even with some of the struggles that Sam Hartman had in this game with reading some defense. They left a lot on the field. Like, this could have been an even bigger offensive explosion than it was. And It was still great. But, it tells you what kind of talent this offense has. It just hasn't even come close to reaching its potential yet.
Yeah, I would piggyback a lot of what Vince was saying, but I'd spin it as it was refreshing to see Notre Dame get into kind of formations and break some tendencies that they usually had. One that stuck out specifically to me was the touchdown pass to Raritan, just using a lot of the same look that you use in predominantly a lot of your run plays, and then hitting a nice play action. Sam actually completely turning his back to the defense, rolling out and finding Raritan in the back of the end zone. That's what we wanted to see. And then what Vince was saying too, of just getting different personnels on the field that would be, fully utilized properly. Like Greathouse, Tyree, Faison, it felt like they're more kind of strategically, designing plays, but calling plays that allowed those guys to get open. And it really felt like Jared Parker kind of listened to the feedback, right? Like they had the second bye week, and it really felt like he listens to, I guess, a lot of the media or the critics, and not that that's what you're supposed to do, but it's refreshing.
Well, I mean, we said it last week. He acknowledged the fact that he gets feedback on everything. Like he has media relations, tell him what's going on, what people are talking about. Who knows? I don't know.
I would be very disappointed if he changed the game plan based on what we were saying. Like that would bother me in a lot of ways.
There was stuff that was brought up that it felt intentional that he kind of self-corrected on, AKA the play action. Like you literally went from like 2 or 3 play actions to, I don't know how many they ran against Wake Forest, but it was more than 2 or 3. And it
was like 8, something like that.
I still think it had as much to do with who the opponent was as anything, absolutely. Because
that would make me much happier if that was the case. You know what I mean?
Well, we talked about it during the week. I mean, you can say that the offense looked better. They did, but the opponent was also worse. Those, they were smaller, slower athletes that they were going against than teams like Clemson and Louisville had, or, even Duke for that matter. Like it just, they weren't as good a defense, and they presented some different opportunities. I think the way that they try to play defense, they presented some opportunities that Jared Parker and the offense could take it. Now, they did break some tendencies, which was great. Like it shouldn't matter who your opponent is. You should always be trying to break tendencies. And like to your point about formations and personnel, like when the Rams and Sean McVay were at their best a few years ago, they were a predominant 11 personnel team. So they didn't switch out a whole lot. They just moved, they lined up a little bit differently, and they ran different plays with the same personnel groupings out there. And that's something that I think as Jared Parker continues to mature as an offensive coordinator, he just has to figure out how to do more of. It's not always about, okay, let's get 13 out there and 21 and 20, whatever. You can keep relatively the same guys out there. It's just a matter of how you line them up and where you have them go after you snap the ball, and play action helps. But again, like, there have been games where they've tried to use play action this year. Sam Hartman was just not successful out of it. They were a lot more successful in this case. And again, I'm not trying to take anything away from Notre Dame in this aspect, but I do think who the defense was played into that. It helped them out. It helped them have some success, like freezing a safety that's probably not as good, those kind of things.
That's all absolutely true. The defense that they played was not good. And the defense they're going to play Saturday is even
not
worse.
Good. Yes.
It's even worse.
Yes.
I mean, they are god awful. There are like 3 defenses in the country that are worse.
Right.
USC.
Statistically. No, not even USC. They
really?
are. Yes, not even USC. And I can give you those stats momentarily.
127 in total defense, 127 in pass efficiency defense, and 126, I think, in maybe red zone. One of those, like
they're 130 in scoring defense.
Yeah,
so,
it's scoring defense. They were 126. Yeah, I think that they fell.
I mean, they're
or maybe
terrible.
They came up. I don't know, but
they're terrible.
Exactly.
They're in like the one percentile.
I mean, they are incredibly bad. So, like, we're talking teams like Colorado, South Florida, and North Texas that are like worse than Stanford. Okay. So this is an even worse defense than they played last week.
Right.
And what you're saying is absolutely true. They had success against a bad defense. There's no doubt about it. The difference for me, though, from an X's and O's and an analyst standpoint, is they called different. They called plays that, number one, like Jesse said, broke tendency, which is fantastic. And it shouldn't take a second bye week, by the way.
That's what I mean.
Happen.
Like, what is going on?
I have a big problem with that because you literally have analysts who are getting paid to watch film and
that's
know your tendencies.
When when you come to game 3 of the season, basically, but they obviously played 8 straight games. When you come to game 3 and into game 4, you've got to have those guys breaking that stuff down. So it's like, here's what we're doing. This is what we need to break.
Right.
And that's on the head coach as well. Whether, it's not just the offensive coordinator, that's on the head coach to impress upon both, especially the offensive coaches, I think, but the defensive coaches too. So it's like, we can't be predictable. Like, we're not good enough yet to just line up and say, this is what we're going to do. Stop us.
Right. Because back in the day when it was just the coaching staff, you use buys to self-scout and all of that. And that's absolutely true. But in modern college football, you literally have people on the payroll to do that for you. It shouldn't take a bye week to do a lot of those things. So
exactly,
that's a problem that I have, that it took the second bye week of the season before game 11 to break tendency. Like that's concerning to me. Okay. And like you said, that's a big picture problem. That's a head coach program problem, not an offense or defensive problem.
But those are things that you can sit back and start to look at a little bit in this offseason. That's
absolutely 100%.
Marcus Freeman goes through his self-evaluation like he does week to week, as we credit him before, but he's very good at that. But this can't be a blind spot for him. This has to be something that he prioritizes heading to next year.
And the other thing let me finish my other thought before I move on to the next one. But my original thought about the game plan is it was creative. It was timing. It was tempo. It was a lot of different things that we just haven't seen since the first 4 games of the season. We're seeing it now.
First time in a long time.
And yes, the competition was different. And so I guess that would back me up to say, okay, is the offensive staff or is the head coach or whatever dictating how they want to call games based on how good or bad the defense is? Like, hey man, we're playing Wake Forest. Go ahead and be as creative as you need to be.
Well, I do think the head coach gets more conservative when he's going up against better teams.
That's a problem.
That is the thing, right?
Yes,
I think we all agree on that.
I think we've seen that. We have enough evidence in front of us that is absolutely the case. And that's a problem. That is a problem that they are going to need to fix, because I think that this offense could have been so much better in those big games if they were allowed to be creative and they were allowed to
Right.
break tendency and all of those different things.
He's still
So
got
we're thinking
that.
it.
He's just got that. He's a defensive guy his whole
Yeah.
life,
Yeah.
basically. And that's the mentality he has. He feels like
Yeah.
in those bigger games, it seems like he has to try to protect
Right.
the defense, even though he has an elite defense. You don't have to protect them. They're big boys.
Right.
Like Alec Golden's a big boy. He
Oh,
can
yeah.
he can figure that stuff out on his own
Right.
now. You need to, like offense in big time college football is what wins championships. I
Absolutely.
realize we all grew up on defense wins championships as the
Not
mantra, but
anymore.
in today's world in college football, it's offense, and you have to be
Right.
more dynamic and make more explosive plays against
Mhm.
the better teams on your schedule. It can't just be against Wake Forest and Central Michigan.
Right. And I think games like this past Saturday and probably this coming Saturday are going to show us is that, and then people are going to get pissed, and that's okay. This is not a Jared Parker problem. This is not a Jared Parker problem, in my opinion. It's just not. And so, but they need to spend the offseason figuring all of that out. But I have no problem with them bringing him back because I don't think he's the root of the issue. He's shown that he can be creative in play design, play calling, and game planning. He's shown. We've seen it. We just got to see it for 12 games, not 6.
Yeah. Again, I think there's a little tug of war going
Oh,
on.
absolutely.
And it's,
Completely agree.
and when you are the head coach who had a season like he had last season and the things that happened in the off season and what was he maybe, there were different things he was nitpicked for last year. Obviously, a lot more things have been amplified this year, but he was too nice a guy. He
Sure.
let Tommy Rees just do his own thing. Like he let his coaches have too much autonomy. And I do think that, not that he was in there micromanaging, but I do think that you saw more of Marcus Freeman's fingerprints on some different things this year as a result of that. And it's just about finding balance. He's still a young head coach.
Absolutely.
And that's what it is. You just have to find some balance and trust your guys, trust your coaches, but it's, have input, but you've got to trust them that they're going to put together the game plan that you need to go out there and win.
Yep. Completely agree.
I think last year there were a lot of people up in arms about Al Golden, and kind of, you see how he did in a second year of being the defensive coordinator. And I feel like Jared Parker also deserves kind of the same sort of, there's been a little bit of heat this year, but he deserves that second year of working with these guys and showing kind of what he can do. And I said this the other day, I feel like, if they go with Angeli or Minchie, I really feel like it's beneficial for them. Because even though that those guys didn't play, they still got to practice in Jared Parker's offense and system the entire season. So you're going into, a year 2 with, a quarterback that might not have played actual games, but at least he has comfort and understanding with the offense and understanding, how it works and that kind of stuff. So I feel like that could be really beneficial for kind of all parties next season.
And his system at least has roots to Tommy Rees, which has roots to Brian Kelly as well. But my point is, that is a question as they get into this offseason, and if there is a decision to be made there, not to get too far off topic, but do you want your young quarterbacks who just spent a year in the system to be learning a new system already when you've got another young quarterback coming in, this winter? So I tell you what, Vince, it's going to be an interesting offseason of shows that we'll be doing here. I told Jesse this week, the thing that ticked me off, I think not ticked me off, but it's like, of course, they announced the NBC deal right before the last home game, and now it's kind of anticlimactic because that's a hell of an offseason topic generator is the TV contract, and now it's gone. All we can do is speculate about how much money it's actually worth because the one piece of information we wanted to know, they didn't release, of course. So.
And they said that they're not going to. Like they flat out told Brian, we're probably not going to.
Yep.
So the timing of the release, the fact that they're not releasing the information that we want pretty much tells me they didn't get what they wanted. I'm sure it's a fine deal. I'm sure they probably doubled what they got before. It's fine.
If the report is correct, if it's $50 million and then you add on the ACC money and then you sprinkle in other money that they get from games that aren't on either NBC or, part of the ACC deal, which is at least 2 or 3 games, whether it's like a game on Fox or, whatever it happens to be, or just regular ESPN. Like you're sitting right around $70 million,
which
basically,
is plenty.
which is
Yeah.
that's
they don't
competitive.
Need to make, they don't need to make
Right.
100. Like they don't. That's
Yeah.
not where Notre Dame needs to be, because you also have to remember the fact that with NBC, them being the sole, deal there, they get to preach whatever they want as far as like game time kickoffs and a lot of the
They have
stuff
input. Yeah,
Notre Dame
that's
has a
right.
lot of control over, whereas if you're a member of the conference, you don't have that kind of control.
That's right.
Hence,
you'll take your noon kickoff
Noon
and you'll
game.
like
Right.
it. Yeah.
Well, and hence Notre Dame being on the Pac-12 network for this game. That was completely out of Notre Dame's control, obviously, but that's a conference decision. It's a conference / TV decision. But like Stanford didn't have any say. They're like, yes, Pac-12 network.
Right.
That's where we want to be. Like,
and I mean, it's about demand based, like Fox or Disney, either one of them could have taken, but like Ohio State and Michigan's going to be on at noon. So that was obviously
Right.
Fox's first choice. What happened? Like they could have still got that someplace, but it obviously just a 3-loss. It's not as much about Notre Dame's record as it is about what Stanford is. Notre Dame is a 3-loss team, but Stanford is just a 3-win team. And that's just not that desirable for any TV network. And that's why you get it on the Pac-12 network. And by the way, remember, if you go Fubo TV, people still trying to figure out where you find it. You can get that free subscription. From what I understand, you do have to have what's called the elite tier in Fubo to get the Notre Dame game, which is like $8 or something like it. So you can pay $8 and get it and then cancel it right away.
Well, and the other thing I found out was that it's also available on Dish Network.
Really?
And you don't have to have anything extra. So
it's just nationwide on Dish. I don't have Dish, but
right. So it's on Dish Network as well.
I was scrolling through my DirecTV and I couldn't even, because like sometimes even if there's a channel there, but you just don't have access, it's like grayed out or whatever on your your channel guide. I was looking for Pac-12 Network, couldn't even find it on DirecTV.
It's channel 406 on Dish. I was told yesterday by the old father-in-law, because he has Dish and he's like, I get the Pac-12 Network. I go, no, you don't. I was arguing with him. He's like, I'm watching college volleyball right now. I'm like, okay, you win. You get Pac-12 Network. I don't know what to tell you. So there you go.
Nice. What do you think Notre Dame should be most thankful for as we sit here Thanksgiving weekend? This was a tough one for me.
This was an easy one for me. Notre Dame should be thankful for their dominant and elite defense, because I feel like it has masked some of their deficiencies elsewhere amongst the team. And I think if you had an average to below average defense, I think this team could potentially have more than 3 losses, unfortunately. So I think that the defense has obviously given the offense, good field position, but it's also taken a lot of the stress off the offense in some of these games where they've just given the ball to the offense and created good opportunities for the team and allowed you to kind of run away from some games early on. So again, I think if you didn't have this defense, especially against like Ohio State, that could have got, with some of those games that Notre Dame really struggled to score in too, the defense kept them in. So I'm going to have to go with the defense. I thought they've been great all year. And again, they've kind of masked some deficiencies elsewhere.
That's by the way. It's a great answer, because that's absolutely from an X's and O standpoint where Notre Dame should be thankful. So I am 100% there with you. I'm going to go a little bit more big picture, and I just got done bashing the Notre Dame program for some certain things that they need to fix and they need to work on. But I'm still going to say that Notre Dame needs to be thankful that Marcus Freeman is their head coach, because I still think it's the right answer. He needs to fix some things. There's no doubt about it. He's got an offseason to do it. But if you continue to look at the recruiting trail, you continue to look at the way he's bringing in old players, the way he's doing everything right off the field. And I think these back-to-back recruiting classes are really going to start to pay dividends, as early as this coming fall, the 24 season. I think you're really going to see the impact of the Marcus Freeman era when it comes to recruiting and all of that. And so I just think Notre Dame needs to be very thankful that they were able to get him, and that hopefully that he's the right guy. I still think he is, but some things have to be fixed, but I still think he's the right guy for the job.
Just takes a little bit of time, Vince.
Just more time than anybody wants it to take. I mean,
unfortunately, yeah.
Like,
I mean, look, Brent Venables was a hot commodity as a defensive coordinator for years, all the way back to when he was at Oklahoma originally. And then after he went and helped Dabo win a couple national championships at Clemson. And, it was even bumpier for him last year after Lincoln Riley left. They got the ship righted this year. They at least beat Texas, like from their perspective, they can hang that, but they did lose a couple games that I don't think that they thought they were going to lose. So it's still, like they're sitting there, I believe 8-3 right now as well. But my point is they're very similar, like guys who can recruit, guys who are good, really good defensive coordinators, but guys who are still young head coaches. There is still a learning curve regardless. It's how quickly you can get there, because like from Marcus Freeman's perspective, especially like from a fan pressure standpoint, time is starting to run out, and you do have a new AD coming in, and that's always a thing too. When you get an ID or an AD rather who didn't hire you, you have to make sure that you are on his right side. And I'm not saying that he's not on Pete Bavacqua's side, but that's something that we're not going to know until Pete officially takes over the job next summer, and he does officially become his boss. I'd say the one thing, I'll kind of go a little bit different route so that we all have something different here. I do think they should be, and we're going to talk more about Sam Hartman later in rapid fire. I do think they should be thankful for him, because he, even though it hasn't been as successful as we all maybe thought or, wanted it to be, it has still been fairly successful. And we can kind of sit back and evaluate, I think, when this is all said and done, just how successful this was. But I think the biggest thing is still when you look at how he got here, and again, we're going to get into this more detail in rapid fire, the NIL aspect that Notre Dame, can go out and let people know that NIL is a thing here, and you can make a lot of money off NIL. Just ask Sam Hartman. And Sam Hartman has been the poster child for Notre Dame. So I think that is still a good thing, even though the on-field stuff didn't quite go as planned.
Yeah, I was actually talking to a dad of a player of a different sport at Notre Dame, but he's like, man, he goes, NIL is alive and well at Notre Dame. And he's like, they just need to publicize it more in a good way. You know what I mean? They need to put it out there. He's like, the recruits know because they're being told. But he's like, the general fan base needs to know that Notre Dame is doing NIL the right way.
Right.
And kids are getting paid, and they're getting paid good money.
Yep.
It's just nobody hears about it. And so everybody's like, oh, Notre Dame does
that's not,
NIL.
it's just, it's like you were saying though, Vince, it's Notre Dame does it the right way. It's not the main focus of why people should be here. It's just kind of like the extra.
Sure.
It's like the end of the year bonus.
The balance for Notre Dame. They still want people to know that, that people are coming here for the quote unquote right reasons.
Right.
Those kind of things.
But but NIL, I have no problem with the way NIL is supposed to work, right? Sponsorships, name, image, and likeness, like that actual what it's supposed to be. Notre Dame does it that way. They get these kids sponsorships, they get these kids opportunities, they get these kids paid, but they're not doing it with a blank check for recruits. So they're not doing it, the dark way. They're doing it the correct way. And I just think that they need to do a better job of publicizing that to the general public. That's, and you know what? And they probably look at it as, who gives a crap what the general public thinks? All we care about is what the recruits think. And I get that line of thinking.
But it's important. It's important, even if it's just the general public, because there are going to be people who don't know, who are going to try to use it as a negative recruiting tool against Notre Dame. They're going to say, well, you're not going to get anything from Notre Dame. They don't do NIL. There needs to be more out there to let people know so that kind of stuff can be combated. You had the whole, it was a little bit different, but that quarterback coach that Brady Quinn and, Brian were kind of going back and forth on Twitter with a couple of weeks ago, with some of his negative stuff that he was saying about, why would you want to go to Notre Dame and those kind of things. There are always going to be those kind of people out there. And if they have a big enough platform, they can affect some things, because not everyone is educated. That's why I do think they need to get it out there in the world a little bit more.
Agreed.
So they're going on the road to close out the regular season like they always do. It has been, did you know, 1993, the infamous Boston College game the week after Florida State, that was the last time Notre Dame closed the regular season at home.
Wow.
Otherwise, it hasn't always been California, but they started going west. They even went to Hawaii one year. 1999 is when Stanford became part of this end of the season rotation with Notre Dame, or with Stanford and USC for this Thanksgiving weekend. It gets them out there to California every year. But I digress a little bit. That's just something I researched doing another story this week. Oh, Vince is getting out his media guide.
Getting out my media guide. I want to see it.
All right. Go to 1998. I believe it'll say they went to Hawaii.
Gotta
if
find
I'm not mistaken.
The opponent. Come on.
It was either or actually it might be 97 because USC still was part of the Thanksgiving. Notre Dame would go out to LA for Thanksgiving, even though they didn't, have a permanent partner to rotate with back then.
Do we really think that being in California the last game of the season is really even needs to be a thing anymore with the way transportation is and communication and Zoom and just all of those different things? Like, is that I get back in the 90s why that was something that was important. Like, I get it. I just don't think that that's a thing anymore.
Yeah. I mean, and we've talked before, like, I think Southern California is much more important than being, up in Palo Alto and the San Francisco area in Northern California. But the other part of that too is, there were some times back in the days when USC would come to Notre Dame for Thanksgiving weekend. And they, I think, even came here in early December a few times, when the schedule was a little bit different. And with USC going to the Big Ten, they're going to have to play some cold weather games. So I think maybe there needs to be some rethinking of that. If you can get if you could always have USC Thanksgiving weekend, whether it's in LA or here in South Bend, I think that would be a much better deal than what they've got right now with this alternating. And they want to keep Stanford. That's fine. Even though, again, like you and I probably disagree on, but I would like to see
a trophy game
with all these rivalry games going on Thanksgiving weekend. I would like to see Notre Dame USC be a permanent fixture in Thanksgiving weekend.
Right now, the deal, it benefits USC. Sorry, Vince, but the deal benefits USC because they have to go out there, and then USC gets to come here when it's not cold and rainy or snowy, right?
But
so
again,
it's like you're just accommodating USC.
They're going to have to go to Madison, Wisconsin, or Iowa City, or wherever.
Change it now. You might.
They're going to have to play some road games in the Big Ten. And newsflash, it's cold in the Big Ten,
and it's going to be hilarious to watch.
Yes,
I'm just telling you, it's hilarious.
Yeah, I think they'll be like triple layered, especially those DBs and corners.
They come out in the middle of October with like the full thing on. All you can see is like their eyeballs. It's like, dude. The leaves haven't even changed yet. Like, good luck in the Big Ten.
Would you rather see that or the guys who come out when it's obviously cold, shirtless? Like, which one is more?
Well, those are all offensive linemen and middle linebackers. So I'm just saying that those are your people. My people, we dress in layers. Your people are foolish.
My people,
the small, skinny guys on the outside. And we're talking about my past, but like we layer up. And
what is your Italian ancestry, by the way? Like, do you know like what part of Italy it goes back to?
Southern Italy.
Southern Italy. Okay, so even warmer. So they were walking around with their shirts off, and
dude, Southern Italy
are doing their thing,
and Puerto Rican. Like, that's my background. Okay, so we like it a little warmer. Okay, and I was never also. I mean, I coached longer than I played. I was never the coach that was out there in like shorts. Like, that was no, sir. Like, I was in the press box bundled up. Like, there was no chance I was going to be out there showing any skin if it was.
The fun thing is when those cold games happen and you get so hot, it's fun watching all that steam come off your body.
Off the head, just like.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's how you know the people are working. You don't see that come off DBs because they don't sweat. They're just, out there running around.
Just the big smelly lineman. Yeah. I mean, that's where it's at. Like when they bend over and you see the steam coming out their backside.
I like that.
Linemen and linebackers. Those are you people.
But this whole conversation started because this is a road game. And Notre Dame is 2-2 on the road this year. Why do you guys think that they have struggled on the road this season? Because even the two wins, NC State And Duke was obviously a lot
Yeah.
closer. NC State for a time was a bit closer. Why do you think that they've had more troubles on the road this season?
I have to go with preparation because they've come out flat and they've come out, they're not nearly as explosive in these, and it just feels like on the same page or, in sync as they are. And maybe it's, comfortability too, but in the home games,
Sure.
they just look like completely different teams
Yeah.
compared to when they come out on the road. And to me, that falls under the head coach not having his team properly prepared for these road games. And it's like, against Clemson, it was really, really crappy because they came out and they were moving the ball, but then they just didn't finish drives. So it always feels like there's just something, it's like that. There's always kind of that lingering effect or that one thing that slows them up, but it's never the same thing. And so it's just like you want to see all those things fixed and not coming out with these slow starts, because it's like on the road, like that's the last thing that you want to do because you want to grab that momentum, first. It's a big deal when you go on the road to grab that momentum from the home team. So I have to go with slow starts, Vince.
Well, no, it's 100% has to do with preparation, and that's one of the things that I wrote about when predicting this game. Right, like Notre Dame needs to figure out where the flaws are in their road game preparation. Like what is happening? Because I don't think we know the answer to this. But
are they staying at Motel 6s the night before? Right. Like, are they not sleeping well? What's going on?
That's the thing. It's like what part of the road game preparation is the problem? Because Notre Dame played pretty well in a foreign country on the road,
right.
But then the true road games, they've been terrible. They just have been. They're 2-2. But like you said, the wins that they've gotten were a struggle. I mean, NC State was a struggle early, and then they had the weather delay, and then they blew the doors off of them. But then Duke, we know, came down to the last bit, and then they lost the other two. So, where in the preparation is this a problem? Because as Jesse said, and I agree totally, these teams aren't ready to play on the road. They're just not ready to play. And that's the biggest problem. And so that's the head coach. That's the preparation. That's the program. That's something you need to get figured out, because last year it was at home that they had the biggest issues.
That's
against
true.
Very inferior opponents.
Lost to two bad teams, and they
That's
blew
fixed.
everybody out at home this year.
Like, that's
Big
fixed.
Yeah.
That part's fixed. Okay. Now they've got a new problem. They play lackluster on the road. That needs to be fixed.
And it does seem like a mental thing, because when you look at the Louisville and the Clemson games specifically, you're talking about 8 total turnovers in those games, and most of them by the quarterback himself.
Early too.
Yeah. And that's like, it seemed like after that first interception at Louisville, like Sam Hartman mentally was just a different guy. And like, I do think you can read too much into body language and those kind of things, but like he threw that interception and he definitely, he seemed more tentative. He seemed more hesitant and just, he didn't seem like himself. And, he had a couple of fumbles obviously as well. And then, the pick 6 against Clemson, and they talked about, getting spooked after the pick 6 and all that. And like they played a good game in the second half, but you can't come out on the road and put yourself in those situations. Turnovers played a big part of it. How much, preparation had anything to do with that, I don't know, but I do agree with what Marcus Freeman said. Need a faster start, kind of build some confidence, not get yourself in a hole right away, especially against a worse team, because again, at least the other teams that they've played have been pretty good, in terms of the all 4 of those teams have been ranked at some point in the season. Stanford hasn't been ranked in I don't know how many years. So it's like you can't make a stupid mistake early and put yourself in a hole against a team like Clemson this week.
It almost just feels like they need to establish like a tradition on the road. I feel like they get so comfortable at home of going to Mass and then doing the player walk to the stadium. It feels like that's the comfortability that all of these players and coaches like. You know what I mean? Just like that feeling of being at home, the comfortability. If they need to find something that's, tradition on the road of this is what we're going to do every game. And that's what works for them. Maybe they do something in the morning as a team, and then there's just got to be something else to their game day flow from the time they get up on the road to the time they play the game. You got to find a new kind of, I guess, like I'm saying, tradition or way to kind of go approach these games that gets these guys comfortable and gets these guys playing better.
And it's interesting because as Jess and I talked about this week, Marcus Freeman said they're changing the schedule up. Typically, what they've done for Thanksgiving weekend is team gets together after, like practice, team gets together, they do their big Thanksgiving feast, and then they get on the buses, they go to the airport, fly with their bellies full of giblets and, stuffing and whatever else. And then they get out there and they've got Friday out there, but they're going to stay home for Thanksgiving this year. They're going to travel on Friday, which is what they typically do during the season. Kind of seems like it was, maybe a natural opportunity to shake things up a little bit with the, their traditional Thanksgiving schedule. I don't know how much it matters, but they're switching it up this year anyway.
Or are they switching it up to change things around a little bit because that's what everybody's used to doing for this weekend? I don't know. You can look at it both
ways you can look at it. Yeah.
The bottom line is I think this is a bigger fix than sitting down with Ron Paulus and mixing up the schedule. Like they need to figure out kind of rudimentally what is wrong with their road game preparation. And it's an all week thing. I don't think it's just, hey, what time are we getting on the plane? Like it's bigger than that. What it is, I don't know because I'm not inside of it and I don't travel with the team. And so I don't know, but they need to figure something out because it's a problem. It's a completely different team in true road games than they are at home. Completely different.
Yeah, I agree. When you look at this Stanford game, it is going to be a different looking Stanford team that we've gotten used to seeing with David Shaw and Jim Harbaugh over the years, like multiple quarterbacks on the field at the same time. And they do have at least a little bit of an explosive offense. Like, do you want this to be a good, entertaining, competitive game, or does it just need to be, all Notre Dame from start to finish?
I would say, for selfish reasons, I'd like it to be a little bit more engaging throughout the entire game. As long as the defense is out there and does what I don't want to see any big broken plays in terms of like passing and running. I think that's the big thing I'd look for on defensively is, when you're going against some of these teams, I think it's Notre Dame's defense kind of has the mentality of, especially like you're going to play Stanford and they're probably going to have some gimmick plays of, okay, like let's just bend a little bit. But when it's time to really hold and stand, let's just not let them, score essentially. Right. Cause like you see, like last week was a good example. Wake Forest was racking off some runs here and there. But once they got to Notre Dame's side of the field, they really didn't allow them to score much anymore. And so like, I'm okay with that defensively and offensively. I just want to see the continuous, getting guys that we're going to see next year, the opportunity to play make like Faison, Greathouse, Flores. I just want to see that continuous kind of streak of good plays. And Vince talked about it earlier, the way the offense looked against Wake Forest, it felt rhythmic more. And it felt like that was the problem the last few games is it just didn't feel rhythmic. And sometimes it was just hard to watch. Like it was not enjoyable to watch that offense operate. So I'd like to continue to see the offense continue that rhythmic kind of dance that they're going to do of just getting the ball around, letting these guys move in space a little bit and keep it close, not keep it close, but keep it where Sam Hartman could play all four quarters basically is what I need.
Disagree.
You kind of went against what you said. You want on the one hand, you talked about young guys playing, and then you want Sam Hartman to play all four.
Well, like the young guys who've been playing all year, and like the playmaking positions. I'm not talking about like Minchie or Angeli or any of those guys. Listen, I need Sam Hartman to throw for like 5 touchdowns and 300 yards. Okay, I'm just gonna say it.
He's not gonna. Well, it could happen, but he's not going to be in the whole game. Period.
That's what I'm saying. Like I don't want it to be 60-0.
Give me like last
30,
week,
31-7.
Nobody scored for a quarter last week, and every Notre Dame fan was on the, on the edge of the cliff, ready to jump and going crazy. Oh, we're not doing that. Look what it turned into. It's like, you can't score 45 points in one possession, But I do think that considering how bad Stanford truly is, we said it last year. I remember saying it, and I'll probably never forget it. It's still ringing in my ears. When we asked what Notre Dame needs to do to win, I said they needed to show up. Well, I guess you could argue whether or not they showed up last year, but they obviously lost. Like I imagine that's got to be a motivator for a lot of guys on this team as well. And this just needs to be a game where Notre Dame is quite obviously the better team on the
Yes.
field.
They need to
As
kind
they
of just
are.
play ticked off. Everyone just like for the embarrassment that they faced last year at home against a crappy
Bingo.
Stanford team. You throw in Audric Estime is ticked off too because of the Doak Walker thing. Everyone just needs to play with that mentality. Just play ticked off, but you could play ticked off under control at the same time. Like you can use that aggression in a positive way. And that's what you want to see. Like this should almost feel like a revenge game for them. Not that it needs to be, but like you should almost take personally that Stanford embarrassed you the way that they did last year in your own place. You need to go and deliver that back to Stanford in their place this season.
They need to be from a big picture standpoint. They need to be efficient offensively. The first 6 drives, go down, score touchdowns, call it a day, hand the reins off to the next group. Like that's what I need to see. They need to go out and they need to impose their will. And whether that has to do with defensive turnovers, whether that has to do with the offense just going on an 80 or 75-yard drive and just punching them in the mouth and taking away their soul, then that's what they need to do. They are better across the board, every single position, all the way down to the long snapper than Stanford. And they need to show it. This should not be a competitive game. And people are going to be really ticked off if Notre Dame goes 3 and out, 2 series to start this game. And they should be, because that shouldn't happen. That should not happen against a team like Stanford, whether you're on the road, whether you're at home, or whether you're in my backyard. That should not happen. So they need to go out and be efficient. And I don't care what that looks like, but the end result needs to be touchdowns on every possession. And it needs to be defensive efficiency as well, whether you're turning them over, going 3 and out, whatever the case may be. They need to dominate this team. It needs to be over at halftime.
Correctamundo. You know what should happen? I should say, are you ready for rapid fire?
I'm always ready, baby. This is the last regular season rapid fire. So
it is. That's true.
Pretty fired up for
Very true. Here we go. Scale of 1 to 10. Where do you put Stanford on Notre Dame's rivalry scale, Jesse?
10 being like the greatest rival ever. I got to put it like a solid 4, maybe a 5. And I say that just because Stanford as a program has just not really been good. And at least 10 years, I would say. And so part of a rivalry to me is that the other half brings it. It's competitive games. It's not just one side kind of steamrolling the other, but I value the USC rivalry more. I value when Notre Dame played Michigan, that rivalry meant more. At this point, I would say maybe Navy even means more just because of it being like Navy and Stanford. I mean, I guess it's not really a rivalry game, but do. I mean,
you said maybe it means more. Maybe
at this point, yeah. So very low on the rivalry, but when Stanford was good, like when Harbaugh was still there and Shaw was in his first couple of years, like those games felt like a rivalry because both teams were good and it had impact. It was meaningful games most of the time. So yeah, pretty low right now for me.
The only reason I would even maybe put it at a 4 is because there is a trophy involved, because that's what Jesse said.
The Legends Trophy.
This is the most manufactured rivalry / trophy game that I've ever seen in my life. The only reason there's a trophy involved is because they play them every year, and the only reason they play them every year is because Notre Dame wants to end the season in California every year, which is dumb. This was not a rivalry game before they started playing every single year in the late 90s. This was not a rivalry, and it shouldn't be. There's no history to this matchup. None. It is a schedule out of convenience, and they're like, oh, man, this really isn't a rivalry for us, so we better manufacture a trophy so that people give a crap. This is the dumbest thing ever. Take the trophy, throw it away, and get this game off the schedule. There should have never been a trophy to begin with.
I know. And they want to keep him on the schedule. They had an opportunity to get him off the schedule with this ACC thing, and now they're going to try to keep him on the schedule. It's like,
just put him in the normal ACC rotation.
I put this at a 1, and it's just because they play every year. And look, they keep trying to tell us that this is a rivalry game. Marcus Freeman started off telling us what a great rivalry this is. And like you said, the Legends Trophy and all this stuff. It's like, you can tell me that Twilight is a great movie, but that doesn't make me actually believe that Twilight is a great movie. I'm sorry, Robert Pattinson and Kristen Stewart. I just never bought into the whole Twilight thing, and I don't buy into this. as a true rivalry. To me, it's just two teams who happen to play each other every year because, like what Vince was saying, convenience. It accomplished a mission, for Notre Dame to get them out. They wanted to be, they got themselves a partner with USC so that they could rotate this thing every year. Stanford's going to be wearing their scarlet helmets for the first time ever. Did you see that?
Ooh, nope, sure didn't.
Red helmet that they're going to be wearing.
That's not smart
in this game. So, yeah, I just don't buy it as a rivalry game. USC is an actual rivalry game. Michigan,
Yes.
even though they don't play every year,
Yes,
still a rivalry game.
Michigan State, Purdue, like there's so many better rivalries than Stanford.
I mean, Jesse made a good point. When Stanford was actually still good a few years back, and like David Shaw sort of was more than willing to make himself the villain, at times during that, and when it was more competitive, that was a little bit different. But especially where Stanford has fallen back to right now, it's tough to build it up. It's a tough sell to call this a rivalry. I think
it is a tough sell. And I mean, look, Notre Dame is 22-14 against Stanford. And most of those losses came between 2009 and 2017 when Stanford was really, really good.
Yeah. Into the Harbaugh era and
right.
the peak of the Shaw era. Yeah.
Not going to happen anytime soon. It's not going to happen anytime soon. And anybody that watches Stanford play is going to understand that this is not going to change anytime soon. Because if you're upset with the way Notre Dame deals with NIL and recruiting and the transfer portal, thank goodness you're not a Stanford fan.
Really
because
fair.
They're even worse.
It's like you're putting yourself in a hole if you're not going to even try to embrace and with all the, like sitting out there, Silicon Valley, where Stanford is and the things that they could be selling from an NIL perspective, getting, some of those different tech companies involved and stuff like that seems like pretty easy peasy to me. But the way they push back, it's like, man, you're hurting yourself is what you're doing.
Yeah. And they're pretty hamstrung in recruiting, even more so than Notre Dame, because they can't even officially recruit guys until they know they're going to get accepted into the university. It's tough. Don't talk about being hamstrung. That's a tough pill to swallow if you're on the coaching staff and you need to get in on, let's talk about quarterbacks, right? You need to get in on guys that are freshmen in high school. And you can't tell me that freshmen in high school, you're going to know whether they're going to be able to get into Stanford University. It's like there's just a lot of things that are going to be hampered by, and they're just getting left in the dust with modern college football.
Yep. So Sam Hartman has 2,459 passing yards going into this game, as well as 22 touchdown passes on the season. His preseason touchdown total, 26.5. The over-under, which means he needs 5 in this game to go over. Scale of 1 to 10, does he have any chance to get there?
If you asked me this 2 games ago before the Wake Forest game, I would have said this is like a 1 out of 10. But he put up a 4-touchdown game last game. They're going against a worse defense today. He hasn't gotten 5 all year. He's put up 4 twice, once against North Carolina State and once against Wake Forest. There's an outside chance now. It's just a matter of how long are they going to let the offense cook for? How long are they going to let it get ugly potentially?
Do they hit like big explosive 50-yard passes, I think, early on? I think that's going to be the key, because I don't think he has a chance. He's probably going to have to get them in the first half, I think, if he's going to get to 5.
And so I think that I would put this realistically at like a 4. I want to say like a 5 or a 6, but I think 4 is more realistic. But there's still a shot. There's still an outside chance. And what really is frustrating is, he's only 5 away, and he has in the last 6 games
through the stretch where he had nothing. Yeah,
he's got 3 goose eggs. He had goose eggs against Duke, goose eggs against Clemson, and goose eggs against Pitt. And I think the Pitt one is the one that's the most maddening, is because
that's
those interceptions early.
Even if he has 2 in that game, all he needs is 3 today.
3. That's what I mean. And so it's just like how are they able to know that those goose eggs would just pop up eventually? I don't know. It's just frustrating.
They suckered us, man. I don't know how they suckered us so hard.
Oh, and they suckered us on so many different things that we were all like, take the over. Take the over.
Morons. How are they?
The passing yards is realistic. He's at 28.
What do you have for your over under? Because my number is like 29 something.
I got it at 2,800.
Okay, you got it. So I think I got it like early on. I still thought he was going to get to 3,000 yards before the
Same.
season ever started, but I
thought it was
think
gonna be like
you got it after the
3,030.
action started, Jesse. When the number came down a little bit, I got it a little too high.
So I just need 250 passing yards for that
That's
2,800.
definitely doable.
That's really doable.
Yeah,
It's definitely doable. I would have more faith in the yards than I would the touchdowns, obviously. I just don't think he's going to get to 5. Number one, I don't think he's going to be in the game long enough. And number two, they're going to run the ball like crazy. And because this defense
especially with this
is
Audric
that
stuff.
bad. And I don't know. I just don't see this being a competitive game. And they're going to get Sam Hartman out. Like he's not going to, if he plays the whole game, Notre Dame is in big trouble, folks. Big trouble.
true
And
story.
if that's the case, we are having a completely different conversation when we reconvene next week. So I don't think he's going to hit anything. As far
So
as
you're
like
putting
the
it at a
big
1,
numbers,
a
yeah,
0?
Zero. There's no way he gets 5. There's
I
no
give it
way.
like a 2. I give it a 2.
Yeah.
Like
The optimism in this
outside
freaking-
chance, but again, I think it's going to be, that they're like it's just air raid offense out there,
Right.
basically, and they're hitting 50 and 60-yard shots downfield.
And I don't see that being the game plan. Oh man, we got to come out and we got to throw the ball against Stanford. Like that is not going to be the case. So the only chance he has is if like a tunnel screen goes 60 or a slant goes, 50. Like that's the only way that he gets this. Only way.
Okay, so we've been saving this for this show. We had some people ask about it the other day. After Notre Dame's win over Wake Forest last Saturday, the Notre Dame scoreboard crew played the Whitney Houston version of the song I Will Always Love You for Sam Hartman as he left the field. So here's what Wake Forest head coach Dave Clawson said about it this week.
There's no point in complaining about it. We saw it last week in South Bend, right? I mean, it's, here's a guy that we recruited and we developed, and, they're putting a video on him saying, we will always love you. And I'm like, you only dated him for a couple of months. It can't be love. We're the ones that love him. We had 5 years with him. You rented him for a season. So, and that's, they bought him and rented him for a year, and now they love him. So it's, that when that video played, it's just like, holy cow, this is where college football is. So.
You realize that quote's about to go up everywhere.
Whatever. I'm past the point. I mean, it is what it is, right? And again, Sam and I had a great discussion before the game and after the game, and I love the young man, I really do, and I don't blame him at all for what he did. I mean, you can't have, that's the system now, and for him to have the opportunity, to have that experience and make that type of money in 1 year, who can fault him?
All right, Vince, so I'm going to start with you. You were there. You got to see the whole thing in person. You heard Dave Clawson's comments there, and like how prophetic that guy in the media was. Like you realize that quote's about to go viral, right? And here
Right.
we are. It's been viral all week. So what do you think?
Well, first of all, they played it when he got pulled from the game. So it was like it wasn't during the broadcast. It was during a commercial break, right? And Steve Angeli's warming up, that kind of a thing. And he's just off to the side. He's got his helmet off, as far as Sam Hartman, that is. And so if you weren't in the stadium, you had no idea that this took place.
What was going on? Yeah.
I don't think they showed it on the TV copy, right? First of all, it was hilarious. I thought I took it as it was hilarious. Like it was really funny.
Yeah.
Right.
And he was,
and that's what I thought when I heard it,
right.
like
he was
funny.
super embarrassed by it. And he kept pointing at somebody. I think he was pointing at the offensive line. Like he wanted the camera to like get off of him and go someplace else, right? It was hilarious. It was really, really funny. Like I give a lot of props to the Notre Dame video board for like doing that, because I thought it was really, really funny in the moment, right? And I was there. It was in the moment. It was funny. Dave Clawson, I don't know what he's supposed to say when he gets asked about that, because he point blank got asked about it, right? He didn't bring it up.
No, he was asked about something else, and he segued into this. He wasn't even asked about.
So, first of all, number one, you need to be paying more attention to the team that's losing 36-5 or whatever the score
Than
was
what
at
they're
the time.
putting up on the scoreboard. Yeah.
Like, why are you
On the
worried
video
about what's
board.
happening on the video board, dude? Like, let it go. There's definitely some sour grapes there because they took his quarterback and they whooped his butt and all of these. There's sour grapes there, right? And that's fine. I get it. I mean, if I was in his shoes, I would probably feel the same way. But, I think he kind of embarrassed himself by saying some of the things that he did. But I get what he's saying. I understand where he's coming from. It was a joke, man. Like, nobody's professing their love. But here's the other thing. Sam Hartman embraced Notre Dame when he came here, and the entire season said all the right things, did all the right things. 100%. Like, get mad at Sam for loving Notre Dame, or at least on the face of everything, loving Notre Dame. It's clear that he embraced the entire situation. So it's a two-way street, Dave. Like, it's not just unrequited love. This is a relationship.
Yes.
And Sam Hartman's always going to be considered a Notre Dame man. And it is what it is.
So first of all, this is big jealous X energy for me from Mr. Clawson. It just screams jealous X. But, like you said, Vince, this wasn't supposed to be something that's serious. Everyone fangirls over Sam Hartman. Like,
yes,
my friends,
100%.
my group chat of all guy friends fangirl over Sam Hartman, right? And so it's like you can only imagine all of the women out there who tune in. Just like I know I've seen people on Twitter say like, "Oh, I'm an Ohio State fan, but man, that Sam Hartman guy, I would ooh." And so it's just like they're playing into that. Like everyone knows who Sam Hartman is. He's a great guy. He's the quarterback of Notre Dame. He's a handsome gentleman. Like it just all plays into it. And it's like, what's annoying about Clawson is you better get used to it, buddy, because Wake Forest is a program where you're going to get poached from. If you have players that have the ability to go to the NFL after 4 years, why would you not take that opportunity, right? And so this isn't about the NIL. This isn't about what Sam Hartman could get in terms of financials. This was Sam Hartman coming to a school where he felt like he had a better shot of going on into the NFL. He needed to learn. The biggest critique of him is he ran a gimmicky offense. He needed to go find a way to run an offense that could show some of these NFL teams and scouts, hey, I know I've run this slow mesh, but I can do this too. And so I felt like it was really selfish of Clawson to say that, because if you really genuinely cared about that 5-year relationship that you had with Sam Hartman, you wouldn't come out and make those sort of comments. And I'll end it with this. I don't know if you guys saw this. Sam Hartman on Instagram last night posted about 10 picture slide, and it says it's a quote from Batman, and it says, "You either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain." And that has to be a direct relation, because you read the comments. Audric Estime says, "Notre Dame man, heart, heart, heart." JD Bertrand says, "Thanks for coming to Notre Dame, Sam." And so they're very much playing into what has, transpired this week. And obviously Sam loves Notre Dame. He enjoys the opportunity and the time that he had at Notre Dame. So I think it's a really embarrassing look on Clawson's part, but I get why he said it, but you didn't have to go there. There was nothing, you didn't need to go down into this rabbit hole.
Especially unprovoked, because again, he was asked about something else and led into this on his own. So many levels to this. First of all, the year is 1993, the year my wife and I got married. The movie The Bodyguard. Vince, do you remember the movie The Bodyguard? Kevin Costner, Whitney Houston. That was the song, the Whitney Houston version. It was everywhere, man. Like, you could not get, I think it was #1 for I don't know how long. You could not get away from that song. So it's like, it's a little bit much. Personally, the Dolly Parton version, the original, a little bit better than this, I think. Maybe it's because, Whitney was a great singer, obviously, but that song reverberates in my head. 2, it is a jilted lover situation, like Dave Clawson, I get it. It's like you were dating someone, and then after the breakup, you're forced to sit there, in the pew watching them get married.
Like, don't go to the wedding then, man.
or like the wedding reception. It's like first dance time. I will always love you. And Clawson's got to sit there and watch this dance go on. But he was lucky to have him for 5 years to begin with. I mean, just think about where college football is. Like he said, that's where college football is. He's lucky to get him for 5 years to begin with. Did you really think that NIL or not, like you were going to be able to keep a guy for 6 years? I think that's pretty unrealistic, And Vince, if we were doing this on a well-produced TV show, they'd be showing that freshman year photo of
Right.
Sam, with the clean baby face and all that, and the split picture of him with the beard today to show, the difference for, like when Clawson got him and where he is right now and all that kind of stuff. But, Notre Dame fans, I've seen them asking this week, well, did Notre Dame really buy Sam Hartman? Of course they did. Like Jesse said, there were
Right.
benefits. The biggest, one of the biggest benefits was an opportunity for Hartman to get out of that gimmicky offense,
Right.
and come run a more traditional pro style offense, have a chance to go to the NFL. But I subconsciously just said it. NIL was a thing as well. They got him here because even if the NFL doesn't work out, he still just made probably, at least a couple $1,000,000
Correct.
on his NIL stuff. And, so he's got that as a fallback. They pitched him, how someone like him, could come here to Notre Dame, be the quarterback at Notre Dame, make a lot of NIL money. And also, they didn't break out their own pot of gold, to do it.
Right.
But they told him, look, you can come here and you can get a lot of NIL money. And it worked out. The Beats by Dre and Under Armour before the season ever started, and maybe the King of Dublin threw something in there too. I don't know. But it's just, I think Jess said it, like, get used to it, because the kind of program that Wake Forest is, these lower, middle to lower tier Power 5 programs, and even FCS and other levels, you are probably going to be producing players for other programs at some point. Whether
it's kind of like JUCO when you think about it at the end of the day, these guys go there for 2 years and then, they might outgrow their situation and find an opportunity that's better suited for them. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And if you have an issue, then you need to get your program at a stage where that's not the case. Guys want to be there for 3 or 4 years.
Well, and that's what we all knew was going to happen with NIL anyway. The big programs were going to get bigger and better, and they were going to use the lower programs to make themselves better. And it's always been the case. Like, guys have been transferring up since before NIL. It's just now it's more prominent, and it's out in the open, and it's like, hey, here it is. And did Notre Dame, was there a check written and signed by Father Jenkins? No, but Notre Dame facilitated those deals that he got. And Notre Dame promised him, like, look, you're the quarterback at Wake Forest for 5 years. We will instantaneously raise your profile off the field if you come to Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Period. End of discussion.
He has opportunities here at Notre Dame that he didn't have at Wake Forest because he's the quarterback at Notre Dame. And this goes back to what we were talking about earlier in the show. Notre Dame, I realize they're hesitant, on, but there are ample NIL opportunities at Notre Dame. Notre Dame needs to do a little bit better job of, maybe a lot better job of, making that more public to combat some of the negative recruiting type stuff, negative things that float out about, oh, you can't get NIL at Notre Dame. Just look at Sam Hartman. He's the poster child.
That's all you got to do. And it's, and they did a good job of publicizing some of the stuff that Sam Hartman was getting and doing, like, giving the stuff to the players, and,
with the social media and stuff like that.
They did a better job of it, but they need to put out more about, what everybody's getting, what everybody's doing. But I digress on that. But, the bottom line is, Jesse hit the nail on the head. It's a jilted X on this, and he's upset. And it didn't help that he got spanked. His football team got spanked in the game, and it didn't help.
Yeah, maybe that's why his attention was on the video board at that point.
There's nothing you can do, dude.
And that is an annoying song. Like, I'm sorry, again, Whitney Houston, great singer and all that, but that is like when she high note. Oh man,
which is why it was funny though. You know what I mean? It's like a cringeworthy song, which I totally understand.
I felt like an SNL skit, to be honest with you.
It was hilarious. I was dying laughing at the time. Like, I thought it was really funny because the moment that happened, it is absolutely creative, and they hung on to it like way too long. It was like a minute and a half, and that's a long time in that song. And you could tell Sam Hartman was getting annoyed with the whole, like, he was embarrassed. He's like, no, look the camera that way. It was funny. It was really, really funny. And
then he got his marshmallow and his hot chocolate on the way up.
That's what I heard. That was pretty funny. Yeah. So, it's okay to laugh. Like, it's okay to have a good time, Dave. Like, come on, man.
It's not that serious.
It's not.
Scale of 1 to 10, how sure are you this is going to be Audric Estime's last game in an Irish uniform?
I'm going to put this at a solid 7. I think I said earlier in the week, might have
Wow.
been Monday. To me, Audric Estime makes the most sense in terms of bowl game. Who would sit out? I think Joe Alt will play. I think that, and really that's like Alt and Estime on offense are really the two guys. I mean, you could say Hartman, but I know he's playing. And then on defense, I would say
Breaking news.
maybe Xavier Watts, but like there's still questions about if he's even going to come back next season. So it's like you can't even rule him out in that game. Maybe Howard Cross, but I see him playing.
Howard
So
Cross,
yeah,
Riley Mills, guys.
but I think that
decisions.
Estime is, if you look at someone who you would say that's the guy who I think has the highest chance of sitting out and makes the most sense in a bowl game, it's Audric Estime, because he, as a running back, you just can't take that chance of taking a tackle to the leg, a tackle to the ankle.
He stands the greatest chance for injury because of the
Right.
position that he's playing.
And so,
Yeah.
and you look at his stock right now as a running back. I just think that and I said it last week or earlier in the week too. He came out in the press conference in all of his pads, and like after that game against Wake Forest, I think that's a pretty strong indication too of like that's guy who wants to keep those pads on, because once you take him off, that's the last time you're going to take him off at Notre Dame Stadium, right? And so that's, I think, plays into, like, I'm just me reading into the things I've seen. I think Audric Estime is the guy that's ultimately going to sit out. So I think it's a solid 7 out of 10.
I'm going to go 8. I'm going to go a little higher. I originally, when I read the question ahead of time, show prep, I thought it was, is this the last season for Audric Estime? I was like, it's a 75 out of 10. Like, there's no way he's coming back. And it's funny, there was a thread on the board talking about whether Estime will come. No, it was on Twitter. I'm sorry. Whether Estime is going to come back or whether he should or shouldn't. And the original poster was like, he absolutely should. He should do this. Like, are you outside your mind? Like,
Selfish.
Audric Estime is a good running back. There's better running backs in the room than Audric Estime. There just are. And that, I'm sorry, that's just a fact. And if he comes back, his carries are going to be more limited next year than they were this year. That's just going to happen. And so they've got to
see more Jeremiah Love.
Absolutely. And it is in everybody's best interest for Audric Estime to go to the league right now. Everybody's. And then you dial it back to, okay, should he play in the bowl game? And I do think bowl opponent will have something to do with it. I'll just say that. So I'm not ready to start saying this person or this person will or won't play.
That's fair.
I think that's going to play into it. I do.
What you're saying is if it's a chance to play against Brian Kelly, then maybe things change a little bit. Maybe some guys are motivated.
Yes, I do think that. If it's anybody else other than LSU, I don't think that he plays, but that's why I'm only giving it an 8. So there's a 9 and a 10 there that I would have gone to if I knew the bowl opponent at this point, and I don't. So I'm giving it an 8 for all the reasons that Jesse said. There's way too much risk involved for him to go out and play. I agree with that.
I mean,
but man,
I put it at an 8 because you can argue, like, what is he even doing playing in this game? For that matter,
fair.
because what does this game?
And speaking of which,
and it's not like
an individual in his future. So
I was pissed that they had him in on the last drive that he was in, because I get that they're trying to get him 100 yards, but they left him in like 3 or 4 plays after he got the 100.
They've done that a few times this season.
Out.
Like, I don't. Man,
I was really mad because I needed 3 more passing yards from Sam Hartman. So you're taking out Hartman, but you're keeping in Estime.
Right.
Make it make sense.
Well, because 100 yards for Audric Estime is like an actual thing, and there was no number that Sam Hartman needed to get to unless he knew you.
Yeah.
Maybe they were trying to get him, on that Doak Walker list, with that extra, to say he had X amount of 100-yard games. I don't know, but it didn't work. And that's what, like, I look at this game. Jesse and I were talking about it earlier in the week. I look at this game and I think that this could, again, like when we were talking about how many touchdown passes is Hartman going to have. If Estime gets going early, Estime running angry out there, this could turn into the Audric game. Like, you could be talking about a 200-yard game potentially, I think. So yeah, really,
my radar is going crazy. I might have to do a 3 touchdown Audric game just for fun.
A lot of rivalry games. I guess maybe by the time some people listen to this, the Ohio State-Michigan game will either be over or at least at halftime.
It's in the background. People are going to be listening to this in the background.
Is it must-see? Do you care who wins?
I think it's must-see. because I think you have you have all the drama this year, but outside of the drama this year, it's always a big game. It's always a meaningful game of what's going to go, what's going to transpire in the college football playoff. I don't care who ultimately wins because either way, I win. I live in Ohio, and so if Michigan wins, I can make fun of all of the Ohio State people. And if Ohio State wins, my biggest rival or my biggest grudge is a buddy I went to college with in Michigan, and he's a huge Michigan fan. So there's nothing worse than rubbing it in his face anytime Michigan lose. So it's a win-win for me. I just like to see a good game, and again, the implications that it has on the rest of the college football landscape is why it's must see for me.
I'll watch it, so I guess that means it's must see. I don't know, like there's not gonna be any other noon game that I'm interested in that I'm aware of. So
Well, that's what I like about the the Fox with the big noon kickoffs. When
Yeah.
you can put a big
They
game
just
like
give
this
it to
on
you
at noon, roll out
Yeah.
there and
Which-
just watch it. I like it.
and it's like the only
Like New Year's
benefit of
Day almost.
it's like the only benefit of Notre Dame playing at 7 is you get to watch that entire game, which I will do. And so it is must-see TV. Do I care who wins? Not really. Like I guess I dislike both teams, but with
Right.
everything
So it's
that's
always a
going-
win-win.
Yeah, but with everything that's going on right now, I do care if Michigan loses. Like I would very much be in favor of that. And I probably, even if all of this stuff wasn't going on, I would still root against Michigan because that's just what I do. So I do care who wins, but at the end of the day, it's like, does it change anything about my life? No, I don't. I'm not going to lose sleep if Michigan happens to win that game. I'll just be annoyed. So I care. I
mean,
guess.
If you love college football, which we do, it's a must-see game because it's two of the top teams in the country, and it's a rivalry game. It's the end of the season. It's like this game counts or whatever. But this has always been the Schadenfreude game to me. It's like I've always pulled for the team that is going to mess up the other one's season the most when Michigan and Ohio State play, but they're both undefeated. And obviously they both still have a chance, just like last year, of getting in the playoff. But at least we know pretty much the winner of this game is getting into the playoff. And then it'll be a matter of, what the game looks like if the loser gets in and all that kind of stuff. So do I care who wins? Kind of like what Vince said, I'm probably slightly pulling for Ohio State just a little bit more, just because of all the crybaby stuff that Michigan has been doing for the last month with all this sign stealing. You're not stop being martyrs. Like you did it. You acknowledged you did it. Just quit already. Like just come on. So for that reason, I'm sort of forced to pull a little bit more for the guy who was born on third base, I guess.
Well, I mean, you're not wrong because, it's Michigan versus everybody. Well, it's because you're an idiot. It's because you don't shut up. That's why everybody's against you, because everybody has a problem with the way you're handling the situation.
Right.
And
you're not America's team.
No, not even close. And nobody gives a crap about Michigan outside of Michigan. But they have made themselves a target. That's the problem. They have made themselves a national target because, the old saying where there's smoke, there's fire. All these little violations that Michigan's been having to deal with over the last few years under Jim Harbaugh. It's, no big deal there. Oh, it's no big deal here. Oh, it's no big deal here. Well, it's starting to become a big deal, and you can't sit there and be like, well, it's not our fault. We did it, but, don't be mad.
Right.
Like that. I can't stand that. Just own it. If they would have just sat back and owned it, there actually might be people rooting for Michigan to win this game coming up because there's plenty to hate about Ohio State. Believe me, I am not a fan of the Bucknuts. But in this case, I hope they throttle Michigan in Michigan Stadium. I really do.
Yeah. I mean, you're either going to watch the game as a total neutral party or you've got to pull for somebody. So
I can't watch games where I don't care. I can't. I have to be pulling for somebody for some reason.
That's why gambling is great, right? Gives you a rooting interest.
It was very easy to find a reason to root against Michigan.
Should Florida State make the college football playoff without Jordan Travis if they go 13-0?
I'm going to have to say yes, because I don't think that you should be judged off of, what potentially could be happen. You should only be judged off of what you have done. And if that were the case with Ohio State a few years ago, they would have, they would have got left out. But Cardell Jones found a way for them to win in the playoffs.
Right.
And to me, that's enough to say that any team could have that happen. We don't know what Florida State's backups look like. We're going to find out here, in these last 2 games that they're going to play in. But if they find a way to win with the backup against Florida, who's, not great, and a good Louisville team in the ACC championship, of course they do. You don't deserve to be penalized again for what could be forecasted to happen. You should be rewarded for what you have done. And so I do think that they should deserve their chance at 13-0.
I completely agree with Jesse. If they're 13-0, they belong in. You can't knock a team if they're one of the only undefeated teams in the country in a Power 5 conference. They won their conference. They did all the things that they're supposed to do. You can't knock them because a kid got hurt like that.
Right.
I don't think that's fair. I'm sorry. Will they get pounded maybe in the first game of the playoff? Maybe, but they still deserve to be there. And so if they go undefeated, 13-0, they 100% belong in the college football playoff. I think they probably lose Saturday, but
They might.
so it may be a moot point, but if they're 13-0, they belong in. They belong in.
No, absolutely. And the case that Jesse brought up, the Cardale Jones, Ohio State was on their 3rd string quarterback and they won a national championship. Like, if they keep winning with the back, and that's what they've still got 2 more chances to show that they deserve to be in. Obviously, if they lose one of these games, then no, they don't deserve to be in the playoff. But if they go 13-0 with the backup quarterback, I think they absolutely deserve to be in there. There's no reason to leave them out, because again, there's precedent that's happened before.
It's a good call. If they go 12-1, like let's say they lose today or Saturday, and then they win the ACC championship, right? So they're a conference champion with 1 loss. Now you're comparing a lot of 1-loss conference champions.
Yeah.
So if you're comparing resumes, then I think they fall behind because of the Travis injury.
Right.
So that's where I think it comes into play if they lose the game.
Exactly.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, exactly. And, like we were talking about Louisville sitting there with 1 loss, if they run the table as well, like, do they deserve to be in there? And I realize, we're kind of shifting here, but personally, I don't think they do, because of when you start comparing who these other teams lost to, the Pittsburgh loss is a lot worse for Louisville than any of these other teams they're going to have for a loss.
I think an injured Jordan Travis is better than Plummer at quarterback too. So, you take that into account.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. So we're coming out of Thanksgiving weekend. Lions head coach Dan Campbell says turkey stinks. He'd rather have ham. He doesn't like dressing or cranberry sauce. Where do you stand on Dan Campbell's Thanksgiving hot takes?
Vince, I love turkey. I just think it's a matter of if the turkey's done right. You shouldn't blame turkey for the cook if it being dry or not having a lot of flavor or anything like that. If you run into some good, juicy, flavorful turkey, how are you turning that down? Like that's good, solid meat. And then you throw in, I'm not a cranberry sauce guy, but I know people who are. And I mean, it just adds that kind of flavor. And especially if you do have a dry turkey, that cranberry sauce can bring back some of that juiciness that it's missing. So I'm always a fan of the turkey. I don't think it should ever be taken out of Thanksgiving.
What kind of cranberry sauce, Dyers?
It's typically whatever my wife buys. I think she might get it at Trader Joe's. I'm not sure.
I can see the can of Ocean.
It's just, I don't go overboard with the cranberry sauce, but I like a little cranberry sauce.
Sure.
And especially when I'm doing the leftover sandwiches, that's when I really love the cranberry sauce with the turkey. And I'll even smear a little bit of, mashed sweet potato on that sandwich. So,
all right.
Yeah,
I'm a big fan of the gelatin. The one that looks
like the fake, as fake as you can get. That's a good call.
It's like the one your grandma brings to the party.
I love that one.
Not the real lumpy stuff and all that. Yeah, like the gelatin cranberry sauce. There you go. I'm
sorry. I dig it, and I don't like. A little goes a long way. Don't get me wrong, but I like the canned stuff better. That's me. As far as the turkey is concerned, Thanksgiving is for turkey. I get that. And I usually make the bird. My wife and I will make the bird, and then everybody brings a dish, kind of a deal, right? And so I think we do a pretty good turkey, to be honest with you.
Okay.
But if you had a cooked ham and you had the turkey sitting side by side, I'm going ham all day.
Ooh.
I'm
going
half
ham
and
all
half.
day.
I
See,
respect my turkey.
and we actually do. We do both in
Do
this
you?
household because some
Well
people
done.
like turkey,
Okay.
some people like ham. My
Yeah.
dad and my daughter are like the two that are all in on the ham.
Yeah.
As long as the bird's cooked right, you can still
Right.
dress it up with a little gravy and cranberry
Sure.
sauce and stuff like
Sure.
that. But yeah.
And we always do a ham for Christmas. So, I just got to wait
Yeah.
a month. So I'll eat the turkey. I have no problem with that. I'll wait a month to get my ham. But I love dressing. I do love the stuffing / dressing. Like, big fan of that. I mean, carbs, clearly he's a fan. I'm a fan of carbs.
Aren't
And
we
then,
all?
a good pumpkin pie. Like, there are certain staples that I am a big fan of. Any kind of a potato.
Yep.
Again, carbs, not surprisingly. I do like a potato or like a mac and cheese, like a baked mac and cheese, that kind of a deal. So
Yeah.
it is Thanksgiving. I will go the turkey route, but I do prefer ham.
I would probably actually lean a little bit towards ham, but on Thanksgiving, I
Right.
do like the turkey.
Yeah.
Like, in general, I like ham better than turkey. But here's the spin that you have to try if you haven't already done this. I started doing this a couple years back. Get yourself a little waffle maker, take
Okay.
your dressing, put it in the waffle maker, and make yourself a stuffing waffle, and then like
Really?
put your stuff on top of it, like if you like combining in that like, or even like a turkey sandwich with, like,
The
if you do a
waffle
couple of
bread?
those
Waffle.
waffles.
Like
So
a
It's
stuffing
really
waffle
good.
bread.
Yeah.
and like it crisps up the
So my
dressing a
favorite
little
part
bit.
about Thanksgiving is actually the round two, because we usually eat and then I get a round two of when the Cowboys come on. I get the rolls. I make like turkey sandwiches with stuffing, cheesy potato. I make some like ham sandwiches with stuffing, cheesy potato.
Solid.
It is, and it's just a nice, just leftover sandwich. And that's, I don't know why, but that's really when the it hits for me.
I get that.
And I love those waffles. He did, it's like just a little waffle maker. You just throw kind of like the corn casserole, a little bit of stuffing.
Yeah, that's a good call too. The corn casserole in the waffle maker is also a good one.
Kind of becomes
Corn
like
casserole.
cornbread almost.
Yep.
Corn casserole is the bomb if it's done right.
Yeah.
I'm a
Exactly.
big fan. Big.
I think that's the
fan.
issue with Thanksgiving is unfortunately people just don't have,
Just don't
the
do
best
it.
cooks out
Yeah.
there.
That's right.
You're right, and that could spoil it for people.
Yeah.
And you're stuck there. You're
So you're
stuck
saying
there with
Dan
the bad
Campbell's
cook.
mom
And you
was
just
not
gotta
a good
sit
enough
there and
cook.
eat him like, oh yeah, mom, this tastes really good this year.
mean-
Oh, grandma, you're the best cook I know.
Yeah, it could be wife, I suppose, too.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what he's got going on. I don't know his situation, but
All right. So we're going to roll this as we finish up with the game itself. Notre Dame, Stanford. Notre Dame is favored by 25.5. The over-under is 51.5. So let's just roll this into our game prediction right now. What's the final outcome going
Vince,
to
you
be?
got to go first. I'm still calculating.
Vince has to go. What was the over/under for the total? Because I slipped
51.5.
Oh my goodness! Of course it is. Okay, so I will take Notre Dame to cover. I think that's going to be fairly easy, to be honest with you. And even though that's a rather large number, I still think that's going to be pretty easy. I guess I got to take the under for total points because that's what I ended up guessing. I had no
Really?
idea the number was at 51.5 when I made my guess. And it will probably go over, but I got to stick with my guess, right? I got to stay true to the prediction. I outlined in my prediction all the two, they're 2-2 on the road, all the stuff that we already talked about, all the issues that they've had on the road and all the different things. I don't think it matters in this game. I really don't. That's how bad Stanford is. They're really, really, really bad. The best attribute they have is their passing game, which ranks 57th in the country. But they're going up against Notre Dame's third-ranked pass defense. So I think that completely gets neutralized, right? So my prediction is Notre Dame 48, Stanford 3, which would be
Goodness.
the lowest number of points Stanford has ever scored in the series against Notre Dame. And I didn't realize that until I looked. Actually, it's the lowest since 1942 when Notre Dame blanked them 27-0.
Okay.
So I just think it's going to be a blowout, and I don't think they're going to sniff the end zone. And so, if they happen to get a touchdown, obviously that makes it go over. But right now, my total's 51. So I guess me and Vegas were right on the same page with each other. I don't know.
All right.
Vince, I'm really upset. You took some firepower from me.
Took some thunder.
Told me to
But
go
here's
first.
that's true. Here's what I always look at. So Stanford their offense averages 20 points per game. I don't think they get that. I think that they're going to be, I don't know, like the only way I see them scoring a touchdown is off like a gimmicky kind of trick play, right? Like something they haven't shown yet. And so, but Notre Dame and Al Golden said that they're, he's the mad scientist. He's ready for all that this week. So I think Stanford's going to be right around 6. I'm with you. I don't think they get in the end zone. I think they sneak a couple field goals in. And then you start looking at, okay, how many points does Stanford usually give up per game? They give up 36 on average per game. So I actually like that 48 number as well. So the total for me was 48-6. And I like that over just barely. But again, Notre Dame against these bad opponents, they have to do all the legwork in the over-under. So that's what makes it so tricky.
That's very true. That's very true. And, like I always worry, like, am I too high with this team and how many points I've got them? Am I too low? The whole thing. I ended up a little bit on the high side, I think, last week, Wake Forest, and it was looking like, oh, man, they're going to get their points by halftime. But, they missed the field goal and kind of settled down. I've got Notre Dame winning 42-13. Got a little bit maybe of a medium between you guys. And I do think that there's still upside with what Notre Dame can score. It's kind of depends on how quickly this thing gets out of hand, and it should get out of hand because of all the things that you guys touched on right there with the the stat rankings and all that different kind of stuff. I don't have to rehash that. It's the bottom line is it's a bad defensive team Notre Dame is facing, a little bit better offensively in terms of what they can score, but they also don't go up against that many good defenses out there on the West Coast. And this is going to be,
that's what I mean.
like, this is going to be, Joel Klatt tried to say that Oregon was the best defense that USC has faced this year, when in fact it is actually Notre Dame's. And this is going to be the best defense that Stanford has faced this year. So 42-13, Notre Dame winning. All right. Well, guys, the regular season anyway is over. Of course, we've got a bowl game and we'll be doing a show before that. And we've got shows every day here on IB as we continue to crank it out year round. And again, don't forget, for listeners/viewers, go to Fubo TV. That's probably the best bet that you have to find Pac-12 Network and find this game. You might have to pay a little bit, but if you really want to watch the game, and as Vince said, Dish TV has it as well. And, you might, just call your local bars and stuff like that. Yeah, and, I saw there were 3 places around town that are definitely going to be carrying it. So,
and your other option is just
the old radio
right here, because we're doing a game watch.
So is there?
We're watching the game live, and we're going to do a modicum amount of play-by-play. It's not Sean Steyer's but we are going to let people know kind of where the ball's going, who, the down and distance, all of that. So you can just watch it with us. You don't even have to have a visual. You can just watch it with us and we'll have a good time. So we're going to
just text me. I'll send you the illegal stream if you don't want to hassle with all of that.
All right. 6:30. Tune in. We'll be there.
All right. Sounds good. Enjoy. Have a great rest of your Thanksgiving weekend, and we will talk to you next week.